Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 5 English lesson on simple verb tenses. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts. We're doing grade 5. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of simple verb tense. So it's basically like a review. So it's like simple verb tense review, all right, on the verb tenses. All right, so our chapter is simple verb tenses, or basically like simple verb tense review. Our subject is English language arts. We're doing grade 5. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of simple verb tense review, it is the sentence past, present, or future tense? And we're going to form and use the irregular past tense. So is the sentence past, meaning is the sentence in the past? Is it in the present? Or is it future tense? And we're going to form and use the irregular past tense. All right, so that is going to be our lessons for today. So when it comes to our simple verb tenses, right? So our verb tenses, right? We either show like a verb is basically the actions that is being done within a sentence. And the subject does the action, meaning it's either the person, an animal, place, or thing that does the action. And the different tenses will either tell us if the action is being done in the present, which is now, in the past, which happened already, or if the action happened in the future, which means that it will still happen or it needs to still happen. All right. That is what it means when it comes to tenses. So whenever you see, for example, a title talking about simple verb tenses or tenses, then your tenses are definitely where it either says it's either in the present, it's in the past, or it's in the future. And when we talk about our simple verb tenses, then it basically just talks about the simple tenses, which is either present tense, the actions that is done in the present, actions done in the past, or actions done in the future. All right. So when it comes to the present tense, right? Our present tense verbs, they tell you about something that is happening now. So the action that is taking place now. So literally everything that you're doing now, that basically tells us that is the present tense. Something that you're doing now. It's the action that you're doing now. And most of our verb tenses are regular. And when we talk about our verb tenses being regular, and then it means that there is basically there's no ending. So when we talk about our verb tenses being regular, because you have regular verb tenses and you have irregular verb tenses. And our regular verb tenses, they have no ending. And they either end in is or they end in es. So we see that when it comes to our regular verb tenses, right? Then our regular verb tenses, they have no ending and it ends with s or es. And usually when we talk about the regular verb tenses, right? Regular verb tenses, they have basically a rule that they follow, meaning that you either add an s or you add an es to basically show the action. And when it comes to the irregular verb tenses, right? Or specifically the irregular present tense, which is to be and to have, then there is basically no rules that you need to follow. It's not regular, it is irregular. There's no rules that you need to follow, meaning that we cannot tell you to either add an S and we cannot tell you to add an ES. You're just gonna have to remember their form. That is irregular verb tenses. There's no rule that you need to follow. You're just going to have to remember the form of that verb. So once again, we see that when it comes to present tense verbs, specifically the regular present tense verbs, then it basically shows us that something is happening now. It is in the present. So present tense, or let's say specifically simple present tense, it shows something that is happening now. And if we look at an example, right? Then we can say, remember also when it comes to simple present tense, whether we add s or es will depend also if we are referring to one person doing an action or more than one person doing an action. So it basically says, for example, let's say, I walk to school or I walk to the store, right? So I, which is me, myself, and I, oh, I said work. I walk. So we say, I walk to the store, which means that walk is basically, it shows the action that we are doing now. Or we can even say, she walks to the store. So I walk to the store. Or one person, we can say, she walks. This is now where we add the S or is. She walks to the store. So walks with an S. That shows our simple present tense. And that is basically our regular present tense, our regular simple present tense, that shows, for example, something that is happening now. It tells us that this one person is doing this now, which is walks, and it ends with an S. And that is the rule. It means that if, for example, one person does an action, one person, one animal, one place, or one thing does an action, and then we either add S or we add ES to that word. If more than one person, as well as I, for example, do an action, then we do not add the S or ES. So that is basically our present tense verbs, right? Now we have our past tense verbs. So our past tense verbs, it tells you about something that has already happened. So our past tense verb, it tells you about something that has already happened. And when it comes to our simple past tense or past tense verb, which is our simple past tense verb, right? Once it is irregular, and then it means once again that you need to follow a rule. And the rule that you need to follow is to add ed to our verb. You see, in the present tense, we added either an S or we added ES to our specific verb to basically show the action. It shows that something's happening now. But when it comes to the past, that tells us about something that has happened already. When the verb is regular, then what we do is we just add an ed to our verb to show the present tense verb or the present tense form of that verb. So if we use that very same sentence, right, but we're going to use it in the past, and then we can say, she walked. You see, we added an ed. She walked to the store. So now that sentence basically shows us or tells us that something is happening in the past, meaning it has happened already. So we followed the rule by either adding an ed. That basically shows that something had happened already. So in the past, we can say she, which is one person, walks to the store. But in the past, that very same person walked to the store. And that is basically our simple or our regular past tense verb, or a simple regular past tense verb that basically shows that it is regular and we need to add ed. And remember, when it comes to the regular past tense verb, then we need to follow the rule of ed, right? If it is irregular and then the wording is going to change, and you're just going to have to remember the form of, or the past tense form of that verb. So that is if it is irregular. When it's regular in the past tense, you're just going to have to follow the rule in the past by adding ed to the verb. But once the verb is irregular in the past, then it means that you are going to have to remember the past tense form of the verb because the word is going to change. And then we have our future tense. And we're going to use the very same sentence where we started by saying she walks to the store. But now in the future, right, we can say that the future tense verb, it tells you about something that is going to happen, meaning it did not happen as yet. It is going to happen. It needs to still happen. And that shows in the future, meaning it did not happen as yet. It is going to happen. And all of our future verb tenses, right? They use the word will in front of the verb to show the action that will be taking place, or that's basically going to still take place. Yes. So if so she talked during class. That is the basically the past verb tense, or the past tense verb of that sentence, because it's talked. Well done. And if we were to make an example, to use this very same example of the future verb tense, and then we can say she will walk to the store. Remember, we said that will is added in front of the verb to basically show the verb tense. That basically shows that it is the future verb tense. And it shows that something is going to happen. It did not happen yet. Going to happen, meaning that it is something that can happen tomorrow. It can happen later tonight. It's something that can happen next week, next month, next year. It is going to happen. Anything that hasn't happened yet, that basically shows, for example, the future tense, where we show that it is going to happen. And we add the word will in front of our verb to show our future verb tense. Will walk to the store. So this is basically examples of our different tenses. We have our present verb tense, which is our regular present verb tense, which we said has no ending, and it either ends with s or es. And we see that she walks to the store, which means that if one person, for example, does the action, and then we add the s or es, if it's more than one person that does the action, we do not add the s. So she walks to the store, or we can even say they walk to the store. But in the past, she walked to the store. We added an ed because it's still regular, and the verb is to add ed. So she walked to the store, or they walked to the store. And then in the future tense, that shows something that is going to happen, we say that we add will in front of our verb to basically show the action. Then we say she will walk to the store, or they will walk to the store. So this is basically just our regular tenses. Regular past tense, regular present tense, as well as regular future tense, right? And with our verbs being irregular either in the present, past, or future, we basically just follow a rule like within our present tense, we add an S. In our past tense, we add an ED. And in our future tense, we add will in front of our verb. But once our verbs is irregular either in the present tense or in the past tense, then there's no rules that we need to follow. You are just going to have to remember the form of the verb because the verb or the wording will change its form. We cannot say add an ed, we cannot say add an is to our verb because the verb is going to change. So you're going to have to remember the form of that verb as it changes. All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca. And we're going to continue on simple verb tenses. So we're going to aplusstudents.ca. And the first lesson is the sentence in the past, the present, or future tense? All right, and we already went over what a present verb tense is, or a regular present verb tense is, what a past verb tense is, as well as a future verb tense is. So now we're going to look at our activities and then we are going to our tests. This is definitely a review on this. So we need to say which tense does the sentence use, whether it is the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense. So we need to say which tense the specific sentence uses. We need to either say if it's in the present, if it's the past tense, or if it's the future tense. It says the birds soared. I'm going to underline the verb and then you will say whether it is the past tense, the present tense, or the future tense. The birds soared high above the street. So the birds soared high above the streets. Is that present tense? Is that past tense? Or is that future tense? We need to say what tense it is. Especially if you look at the word sword that's ending with an ed. Does it show it is the present tense, the past tense, or the future tense? Currently, we're doing is a sentence in the past, present, or future tense. All right. So this is in the past tense. All right. So we say this is in the past tense. And the word that basically tells us this is in the past tense is sword. ED. We added an ed to our verb to basically show the regular past tense of that word. So soared. So the bird soared high above the streets. That is in the past. In the present, we can say the bird soar or soars high above the streets. And in the future, we can say that the bird will soar high above the streets. We are doing simple verb tense review, grade 5. And the lesson that we are doing now first is a sentence in the past, present, or future tense. So well done. Past tense is correct. So well done. The next one says, Akiko teaches, I'm going to underline this word, teaches Uma about customs in Japan. So Akiko teaches Uma about customs in Japan. The word, if you look at the verb teaches, does that show it is in the present? Is that in the past? Or is that in the future? So teaches. Akiko teaches Uma about customs in Japan. Teaches, is that word present tense? Does it show it is in the past tense or in the future tense? All right. And if we were to choose the correct verb tense, right, then yes, we would say it is in the present. Because remember, we said if one person, animal, or thing does an action, and then our in the present, right, which is like now, and then we either add an s or es to our word. So teaches. We either add an es or an s to the verb depending on the word. So well done. So present tense, teaches. Well done. And the next one says, Eric stirred the stove. Eric stirred the sauce on the stove. So stirred. Is that the word stirred? Does it show us that the sentence is either in the present? Does it show it is in the past? Or does it show that it is in the future? Stirred. Eric stirred the sauce on the stove. Is it present tense, past tense, or future tense? Look at ed, stirred. So what tense does the sentence use? Eric stirred the sauce on the stove. All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we would say it is in the past tense. Stirred, and stirred, it's like Eric stirs the pot, the sauce on the pot. But in the past, we said he stirred, and it ends with an ed. So he stirred the sauce on the stove. Well done. Past tense is correct. Well done. It shows basically the action that happened in the past. All right, so now we're going to our test where we're going to say, is the sentence in the past, is it in the present, or is it future tense. Keeping in mind that if a sentence is in the present, right, it either ends with our verb either ends with an S or ES. If it is in the past, then our verb either ends with an ed to show the past tense form, or if it's in the future, then we add will in front of our verb to show basically the future tense, something that needs to still happen. All right, so now we're going to our test. And now it says, which tense does the sentence use? We're going to have to say if it's in the past tense, present tense, or future tense. It says, a tiny creature creeps. I'm going to highlight that word, creeps along the vine. A tiny creature creeps along the vine. We need to say that word creeps based on the sentence. Is it in the past tense, option one, in the present tense, option two, or in the future tense, option three? Which one is correct? And if we were to choose the correct option, so creeps, a tiny creature creeps along the vine. So creeps, is that option one in the past tense, option two present tense, or option three future tense? Which one is correct? And if we were to choose the correct option, so creeps, and then we will say it is the present tense. Remember, we said our simple present or our regular simple present tense, right, either ends with an S or ES. So creeps, something that you're doing now, creeps along the vine. So well done. Option two is correct. The next one says, call carefully spelled the word out loud. So spelled. So call carefully spelled the word out loud. So the word spelled, is that option one in the past tense? Is that option two in the present tense? Or is it option three in the future tense? Which one is correct? Is it in the past tense, option one, in the present tense, option two, or in the future tense, option three? Which one is correct? So spelled, look at that word spelled. Is that past tense, present tense, or future tense? All right, and if we were to choose the correct tense, then yes, we will say it is in the past tense. And remember, we said that in the past tense, our verb ends with an ed, spelled. So well done, past tense. The next one says the doctor will use a stethoscope for this part. So the doctor will use a stethoscope for this part. So will use. If you look at the word will use, is that in the past tense, option one, present tense, option two, or future tense, option three? Will use. The doctor will use a stethoscope for this part. Past tense, option one, present tense, option two, or future tense, option three. Which one is correct? Especially if you look at the word will in front of that verb. All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, then we will say it is the future tense. Especially if we use the word will in front of our verb, it basically shows the future tense. Well done. It shows us that something must still happen or will still happen, is going to still happen. The next one says, we eat yogurt and fruit for breakfast. We eat yogurt and fruit for breakfast. Is that the past tense, option one, present tense, option two, or future tense, option three? Which one is correct? So, eat is a past tense, present tense, or future tense? Eat. All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we will say we eat, meaning it's something that we are doing now. So we can say it is the present tense. Well done. Guys, let's not spam, please. Just one answer. Then the next one says Eric stirred the sauce on the stove. Eric stirred, so stirred, that ends with an ed, stirred the sauce on the stove. Is that in the past tense, is present tense, or future tense? Stirred. So stirred ends with an ed. Is that the past tense, option one, present tense, option two, or future tense? Option three, Eric stirred the sauce on the stove. Stirred. We need to say what or which tense does a sentence use? Past tense, present tense, or future tense? And if we were to choose the correct option, stirred, and then we can say it is in the past tense. Well done. So stirred is in the past tense. And remember, we said that in the past tense, our regular or simple regular past tense verb ends with an ed. That shows the past tense. All right, let's look at another one. This is the last one. It says scientists will measure. So scientists will measure the rainfall in Castroville. So will measure. So will measure. Which tense does the sentence use? This is the last one. So will measure, is that the past tense? Is it the present tense, option two, or the future tense, option three? Scientists will measure the rainfall in Castroville. Which one is correct? All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, then we will say the scientists will measure the rainfall. Then we can say it is future tense. Will measure shows the future tense. Well done. Will measure is correct. All right, so we're going to end just there. The other two lessons we will do in our next lesson, right? Or our next session. But for now, we did simple verb tense review, and with our simple verb tense review, we said that when it comes to verb tenses, we have our different tenses, which is either in the present tense, our verbs in the present tense, verbs in the past tense, or verbs in the future tense. Our verbs in the present tense, right? It shows ongoing action, and it either ends with an s or es. Our verbs in the present tense, in the past tense, it shows something that had happened already. And we can basically just add an ed to our verb to show the past tense form of that verb. And then our future tense, right? We add the word will in front of our verb to show the future tense. All right. And keeping in mind that that is a regular verb tenses. If the verb is irregular and then it changes the wording, we don't follow any rules. All right, so this is the end of our lesson on simple verb tenses. Thank you very much for joining the class, and I really hope that you're going to have a good day further. So, till next time, goodbye.